Recall what chapter 14. What did the lads who went to the cistern find? In verse 3. They behold in verse 18. Chapter 15, and the people asked, where should they go? What did Jeremiah tell them in verse 2? Chapter 16, when the people asked what sin they committed against the Lord, what is Jeremiah's response here in verse 11 and 12? Yeah, they walked after other gods. They not kept the law. They followed their own evil heart. Yeah. This is over and over and over again. And Dwayne and myself was just up here talking about United States, and we can see God's anger here because they weren't following His commandments. A lot of stuff in the United States. I wonder, how God is going to respond to us about all that's going on. He's going to run out of patience eventually. Right, yeah. Assyria, Babylon, too. Yep. Chapter 17. What did the Lord say is cursed in verse 5? Yep, trust in a man. How is a man blessed in verse 7? Yep. Chapter 18. How is Israel like clay in a potter's hand? I have verse 2 and 8, or verse 8.
God will do whatever He wants to with them based on how they act if they relent from their wicked ways.
Right, yeah. Yeah, you get a good vessel if you relent from your wicked ways, and if you don't, then destruction. Chapter 19, what did the broken flask that Jeremiah broke represent in verse 15? Actually, it's 10 through 15. Yeah, doom upon the city. Chapter 20, who was Pashur, P-A-S-H-H-U-R, and what did he do to Jeremiah in verse 1? And verse 2. Verse 2, what did he do to Jeremiah? Yeah. I have here, I guess, what did he tell Pashur in verse 4?
I just wanted to pass one thing on to you. We went to that, to the meeting Tuesday night, and is it okay? Okay. And a guy by the name of Billy Randolph was there, and he was a good preacher. But he said something that was really amazing, at least to me. I don't know, maybe you all laugh at me for thinking this was amazing, but I thought it was. He did it at the very end of the sermon, and he was talking about dealing with despair. You know, when you go into great difficulty, you know, the things you should remember, the things you should do, things that you can do ahead of time to kind of prevent it and all that. But anyways, he kind of came to a crescendo, you know, at the end. And without hearing the whole sermon, maybe it won't seem as significant to you as it did to me. But he said something that went like this. He said, you know, when you find yourself in the darkness, and he had described what that was like. You know, he went into great detail about how you would find yourself in darkness, how you would feel that way. If you haven't found yourself in there, just wait. You will. I mean, he went in and explained this. And then he said, when you find yourself in darkness, he said, remember the things that you know to be true in the light. And I thought, I almost wanted to jump up, you know, when he said that. I thought, because, you know, a lot of times it's really cool when somebody can put something like that into a small little phrase, you know. If you find yourself in darkness, remember what you know to be true in the light. And, you know, I thought, you know, that's exactly what happens. When we get in the darkness, we get in the hard times in life, we forget the training and what everything's about. Not usually just momentarily. I mean, you guys are all faithful Christians that are looking at me right now. I mean, you know these things, but still, it is good to kind of reflect on that. And I thought, you know, that's something that's worthy of like a poster or something, you know. Anyways, I throw that out there because it did really impact me when he said it. So tonight we're going to be dealing again with the burdens. That, you know, and we've talked a little bit about timelines. I've been showing you timelines. We're going to do that tonight. I'm just going to remind you of the things that we get from this. Marty hit on this a little bit. You know, God is active in the world of nations and governments. We can go down through history and see the rise of great nations and the fall. And God is active. He expects obedience of the nations. The gospel is everywhere in the world. Every man has the opportunity to obey it and to put their life on that altar and follow Jesus Christ. Everybody has the ability to do that. The knowledge, no one has an excuse. God's patience and mercy with the nations is on display. Okay, we're going to talk about Egypt tonight, you know, and their demise and how they're going to be turned into a little know-nothing nation, you know. How patient was God with them? You know, they're what is it? They're a civilization from 3000 BC and beyond. And how long did they stay powerful? And finally, God He's going to tell us in here, that's it. They're done. I've had it with Egypt. They're just a good example. And then the accuracy of the prophecy is a faith builder for us. As we read, God's telling us what he's doing. He doesn't need to tell us today in these 2,000 years. He's already told us in a nice section of time how he does it, why he does it, and all these things. And when we read that, our faith soars because he said it ahead of time, and then it happened just like he said it would. And that equates to our thoughts about the end of time, you know, and the reward that we're all hoping for at the end. When we face death, we know that it's not the end, that something more glorious awaits, you know, the children of God. And so those things, I think, as we go through the burdens, they are kind of dry. I mean, you got to admit, it is kind of dry. But if we focus on those things as we go through it, as we read it, we can see there's a lot we can pick up and carry forth. Okay, chapters 15 and 16, was the burden of Moab. The Bible is very clear. Their arrogance, that was an arrogant bunch. Their idolatry, their fear and loathing of God's chosen people, Israel. Some of the things that happened, remember the refusal to allow Israel across their land when they asked, why should they have been a little bit more accommodating to Israel? What was Moab to Israel? Why should they have been a little bit more accommodating than, let's say, the Amorites or the Amalekites? Kind of related, that's right. They were. Yeah. Yes, they were. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, they were Lot's children. And so, therefore, if they were Lot's children, then they were relatives, you know, of Abraham's children. So we would have expected better out of them, but we never did. They never. Then they hired Balaam to curse them. And then they did the ultimate, placed Moabite women, Arabian women too, if I remember. It's not just Moabite. Anyways, they put them next to the camp knowing full well Balaam had coached them what was going to happen. And it did, and lots of people died over it. So Moab has not been a friend to Zion, to God's people. And so they're going to, verse 15 and 16 tells us what's going to happen to Moab. 17, the burden against Damascus. We've already pretty much studied that. You know, Damascus is code word for Syria. That Syria and Israel teamed up against Judah. And Ahaz, he went out and asked Assyria to help him out, and Assyria did. They came in, took care of the problem for him. Quickly for Damascus, but not so quick for Israel. Israel was in 721, so the prophecy was probably around 730. So, then we got the burden against Ethiopia and Egypt. Just tons of stuff there with them, but false hope afforded the nations against Assyria. You know, Egypt always put themselves forth as an alternative, a world power that was willing to help you. But did they really ever help anybody? Not really. They didn't really do anything. They're also the failure to follow the one true God, and many, many other reasons why that occurred. Let's take a look real quick before we get. I've got something special I want to kind of go through here once we get done with this. Let's take a look at the questions. Question number 1: the 15th and 16th chapter describe the burden of who? Moab. What would they do in the streets and on the top of their houses? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, they were going to all but be wiped out. What had they heard of the pride of Moab? What was their number one problem? Seems to be in like every other verse. Pride. Mm-hmm. Yeah, pride seems to be their thing. Their god Chemosh. He's mentioned there a couple of times. What do we know about Chemosh? He had a kind of a special religion. What did they do with Chemosh, with their children? Burned them in the fire. Yeah, it was I think Ashtaroth was that way too, but I think Chemosh was there. And I think it's alluded to in chapter 16. Yeah, in fact, one of the accounts that we had to read that they listed was where they had the Moabite king had rebelled, and they chased him back to his stronghold, and they had put it under siege. You remember this? And he grabbed his firstborn son, offered him to Chemosh on the wall, and the Israelites said, "Forget this," and they just all went home. It's kind of so. Number 4, the 17th chapter describes the burden of whom? Yeah, Damascus. In that day the glory of Jacob shall be so thin it is likened unto what? Really lean. What are some of the other examples? Do you remember? I thought some of them were kind of fun. Yeah. Just a couple of little, the imagery was this, way up on top, a couple swinging around. Yeah, it made me chuckle a little bit because I thought that was really good. So it's going to be pretty thorough. And again, this is talking about the glory of Jacob. I think this is currently talking about Israel, not Judah at this point. It's going to be a pretty thorough, but it'll be the same thing of Judah. It's no different. I think just at that point, in that particular chapter, it's talking about Damascus and Israel. They had forgotten and had not been mindful of whom? Yeah. That's right. And they should have been aware. But we can't get on them too hard because we do the very same thing. The 18th chapter is a woe unto whom? Yep. The 19th chapter describes the burden of whom? Why would Egypt be like unto women and be afraid and fear? Yeah. That's right. And then lastly here, what did Isaiah do for a sign and wonder upon Egypt and Ethiopia? God asked Isaiah to do a lot of stuff, okay? Do you know that? I mean, you think about some of the things he had to do, but this has got to be one of the tough ones. And I don't know, I don't really know how to take this. They kind of soften it in some of the commentary, but I don't know that it's really true. I think it means. Yeah, somebody tell me, what did they make them do? Be bold, be bold. Naked and barefoot, and exposing their back end, okay? And it wasn't that the way it was. These guys were, when they took prisoners, I mean, it was rough, wasn't it? They talk about putting a hook in their mouth. Literally. They drug these people back home. I mean, what better way to drag them than put a hook in their mouth, and the shame of that. That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I get tickled when I read the commentaries. They say, oh, it probably just means just him with his outer garment and his shoes. No, I don't think so. I think that, that God made him do it, Yeah. Yeah. And they probably, go ahead, Jim. Yeah. Right? That. Yeah. Oh, you're thinking maybe that was just the outer garment, because that was a disgrace to wear. Yeah, we would say in your underwear, but there was like a long flowing. I guess he had a long flowing gown, underneath and their thing. But where does the buttocks come in? Okay. Yeah, know, if it's that, yeah. For 3 years, I know. Yeah, and you know they thought he was crazy. Okay, but but all these things he's doing because he can't get their attention. I'm gonna be in trouble when I get home tonight. Denise is gonna. I didn't clear that with her. So anyways, but that shows you the what do I want to say, the conviction, that Isaiah had. When Isaiah asked him to do something, he did it, and he did other things too, like carrying around, luggage, carrying things on his back to show that they would be hauling things, and all he was trying to do was let them know, hey, you guys got to change. God gave them so much time to change, and they didn't. They didn't do it. They were too far gone by the time this happened. Let's do the true and false. The harvest of those who had forgotten God will be a heap in the day of grief. The harvest of those who had forgotten God will be a heap in the day of grief. That's 17:11. I've got true for that one. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. No, they're saying it's going to be so bad. It's your problems or your punishment's going to be a heap. In the day they shall not look. In that day, we're going to take a look at that tonight. In that day, they shall not look at their Maker, but to their altars and their images. In that day, they shall not look to their Maker, but to their altar and their images. Isaiah 17:7-8. Is that statement is false. I've got false for that one. It's worded kind of crazy, Jim. Yeah, I'll give you that. And that day they would not look at their Maker. And that day they're going to look at their Maker. Because see, did you? Okay, good. Yeah, good. Yeah, you're like me. So what he's basically saying is, guess what? When you get in trouble, and isn't this true? Isn't this exactly what happens? We get ourselves in these messes, and then whoa, we look up for God to get us out of it. Hopefully, we learn each time we do that stuff, and we don't get in it again. But that's what they did, and so God's saying there, you're going to look up at your Maker in that day, and you're going to be really sorry that you didn't pay attention to Isaiah and what Isaiah was trying to tell you. The Egyptians would be fighting together as a united nation. That's false. Yeah. They were. It was civil war practically, and they were going. Number 4, Isaiah prophesied a highway out of Egypt to Assyria. That's true. Kind of a messianic. There's a messianic section in here that's kind of interesting. We're not going to hit on that tonight very much, but it's there. Sargon was a king of Egypt. False. I think it's Sargon too. Identify and read the passages in other books that predicted the downfall. It's amazing how consistent some of the stuff was across all three areas. What did you find for Moab in Jeremiah? 48. How about Amos? Yep, that's what I got. How about Damascus in Jeremiah? Yep, and Amos? Yep. Jeremiah for Egypt? I also got 14 to the end of the chapter. I think 46, almost the whole thing wasn't it? Did anybody get anything different than that? Jim got one. You got 1 through 12, and the answer is correct. That's right. But is the second half? Do I have that wrong? I've got 14 to the end. I got FF to the thought. Anyways, I'll check that out and see. Maybe put a question mark by that. How about Ezekiel? What'd you put? Yep. That's what I put. That was a good read, too. Thought questions. In Isaiah, this is a good one. I'm anxious to hear what everybody says. In Isaiah 19:3, the Egyptians are said to seek the charmers, those with familiar spirits and wizards. are there supernatural powers of God? Okay, first of all, that you got to define the question. But hold on, let me just define the question, because I had yes and no to it. But I'm asking it with regard to, they're trying to say that they had folks that could perform miracles and do that stuff. Okay, so we know that there are supernatural powers, right? We know that they're out there. Okay, there's angels, there's demons, there's all kinds of principalities and powers, right? They're out there. Nobody's denying that. But the question that I think he's asking here, they're saying they had this stuff. Did these guys really, these Egyptians, did they really have people that were working the same supernatural stuff that we see, like when Jesus came, and things that the apostles did? Really? I don't think at all. I don't think that we have people that try to tell us that they've experienced supernatural events, today. And we always tell them, no, you don't. That's God is not working supernaturally today. He's working through nature, through the natural. Yeah. The witch at Endor. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. To teach them a little bit of a lesson, because the witch at Endor was shocked above all that she was talking to Samuel. Yeah. So I don't believe that when the Pharaoh, remember when Pharaoh in the first three, the examples that Moses was supposed to show, turning the cane, the snakes got eaten, the water to blood, they were able to do it. This is just trickery, Same with Simon the sorcerer. He wasn't really performing any miracles. He had just convinced people that he was some great person by sleight of hand. So yes, there are principalities and powers. They are supernatural. They are out there, but they're not influencing us. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, we've had this. Him and I. Oh, yeah. It's demonic. And that in and of itself is wrong. Okay, who knows what all kind of things happen to the mind and do this? We know, these folks that worship Satan, they really believe they're in contact, with him, and they're getting information. And who knows what goes on in the minds of men, But I really don't believe that these supernatural principalities and powers are really, really impacted. And then the fact that the Egyptians were seeking these things, what were they not seeking? If they were seeking those things, they weren't seeking the Lord, the one true God, the one person that could help them, okay? You would have thought after what they saw, with the plagues and that, you would have thought that Egypt would have jumped right in line. Some of them would have, but it doesn't seem that happened. So I don't know. Anyways. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. Now, what does that entail? I don't know. I just know that one thing's for sure is that we have a choice. Now, go back to that period, what we call the apostolic period, when demons did possess men. Okay, that did happen during the apostolic period. That did. And why was that allowed to happen? What was the purpose of that? Why did God during that period allow demons to? I don't believe it was epilepsy. A lot of people try to say that was epilepsy. That wasn't, That's correct. It was to show Christ's power over the supernatural. Okay. But those things ended, as Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13, those things ended. We don't need that graphic display to understand, because we have it here now. We can read about it, and we know that this testimony is true. So, yeah, I mean, go ahead, Alan. I saw you thinking back there. I knew you. Well, yeah, right. Yeah. Right in here, in the human mind. You know, if you're seeking that stuff, you're studying it. You're going out and doing that. You're spending your time over here. Where's your time supposed to be? It's supposed to be over here. You know, if there is any kind of things going on, it's going on in the human's mind. I don't believe for 1 minute after the apostolic period and the need for that. You know, I just don't believe that was. Do we have an example of demon possession in the Old Testament? Yeah, God sent a demon to him. I mean, if God, it's God's, yeah, right. That's for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. And that was God's choice to do that. I was trying to think if Elijah or Elisha ever cast out demons out of a person. I bet there's one out there somewhere. But yeah, I'm going to go on a limb here. Doesn't happen. Okay. You guys can now work on it. And I see some of you are going to. I've thrown down the gauntlet. All right. Let's take a look at some stuff. You know, one of the other things that I think is so interesting about Isaiah is there are phrases in there that are used in the New Testament. And one of my favorite spots is Matthew 24. Okay. There is a section of Matthew 24 that is often just absolutely abused. Do you remember what the 3 questions were from Matthew 20? Why don't everybody turn over there? We're going to be over there for a little bit. And now the purpose of this exercise, though, it is Isaiah related. It is to understand that Isaiah and the language that's used prophetically to give examples of how things are. They're like metaphors. It's not the right word. English majors, help me out here. It's using language to describe bleakness. Okay, using language to show despair. Using language to show, yeah, kind of like that. But it's put a finer point on it. Okay. Yeah, this is to let you know that your world's been turned upside down. We've talked about this before. But now let me read to you the 3 questions. If you turn to Matthew 24, the language that we've looked at in Isaiah in a couple of places is not strange. It may be strange to a person that doesn't study the Bible, but when you read Matthew 24 and you see that language, you say, I've seen that before. I know exactly that was over in Isaiah, or that was in Jeremiah, or it was somewhere else. It's not strange to the Bible student, and it helps us understand it. But it's people that don't study it, okay, take it and they run wild with it, okay. So the 3 questions, I'll read them to you from verse number 3. And as he sat upon, remember now, Jesus had gone out to the temple. Remember that? Went out to the temple, and they showed him, wow, look how marvelous. Like us going to Washington, D.C. Look how wonderful this place is. This is a great place. And as they're walking away, Jesus said, I'm telling you, not one stone is going to be left on another. Not one stone left on another. Because I'm talking AD 70. That's what's going to happen. Romans are going to come and they're going to wipe that place out because they're frustrated with them. So they get over on the other side of the Mount of Olives and they ask 3 questions. Tell us when these things shall be, not one stone left on another. What will be the sign of thy coming, okay, and of the end of the world? That's 3 questions. Now, what I'm going to affirm here is that the sign of thy coming is exactly what we're going to read. Turn over to Matthew 26. I'm setting the stage for this, for something. Believe it, I'm going somewhere. Go to Matthew 26 and verse 63. This is where Jesus has been drugged before the high priest, and they're really, really disrespectful to him, but Jesus held his peace, and the high priest answered and said unto him, I adjure thee by the living God, that thou tell thee by the living God, that thou tell us whether thou be the Christ, the Son of God. This is the important part. And Jesus said unto him, Thou hast said, Nevertheless I say unto you, hereafter shall ye see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. That's what I want you to take away from this. He's telling them that you guys are going to see it. You sitting here, ye are going to see it. You're going to see me coming in the clouds of heaven. Of course, then the high priest rent his clothes. He knew exactly what he was saying. So keep that thought, coming in the clouds of heaven in your minds, okay? And then keep in mind what he says here, the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world. There's no problem with the end of the world, right? There's no problem with the end of the world. The problem is with the sign of thy coming. What is that? That sounds like the end of the world. It is not the end of the world. It's exactly what he's talking about here. He says, you are going to see me. You guys, in 33 AD, you guys are going to see me. It's going to be 37 years, but they're going to see him. He's going to come in the clouds, okay? And what he's telling me, that's judgment language. I'm coming in the clouds. I want to show you some other places where that is so. So in Isaiah 19, the very part of our lesson, it says, the burden of Egypt, behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. Is that the end of the world? Absolutely not. In context, he's talking about the burden, that what's going to happen to Egypt, okay? He's going to come in riding on a swift cloud. That cloud imagery runs through the entire book, the entire Bible. So it's not new to us. When we see him coming in the cloud, we know that does not have to be the end of time. And it clears so many things up when you look at the three questions. There's more to it. Read it tonight at home and see. If you try to interpret that, those verses, okay, that have to do with his coming, okay, massive confusion occurs. You're jumping back and forth through the whole thing until you get to verse 36. Verse 36, that period that's talked about, it says there's no sign. There's no sign. Nobody knows. Not even the Son of Man knew. Only God knows it. So in verse 36, I don't think anybody argues that that's the end of time. The argument occurs between verse 3 and verse 35. But it also says in verse 34, these things that are talked about, this generation shall not pass away until these things are fulfilled. Read those verses tonight in their entirety, and people run with them things and build whole doctrines out of them, okay? But it's just talking about Jesus coming in judgment in 70 AD. Every eye shall see him. They're all going to know. They're going to remember what he told them. They're going to remember that he said, you guys are going to see me coming in the clouds, and you're going to remember when they're destroying Jerusalem and your world, I'm on that cloud coming in judgment. All right, let's look at a couple more before we run out of time. Okay, here we go. Revelation. Behold, he cometh with the clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all the kindreds of the earth shall wait on him. Even so, amen. Revelation 1:7. Jesus is coming on the clouds. What's the entire book about Revelation about, other than victory in Jesus? The destruction of, somebody fill in the blank, Rome. Right. Yeah. And I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and upon the cloud sat one like unto the Son of Man, having a golden crown, and upon his hand a sharp sickle. He was going in and reaping the earth. Okay. Judgment. This is judgment. This is one coming in judgment. Then we get Matthew 26. We read that one. We read Jesus. Now, this is the one that gets confused right in the middle of what I'm talking about. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And after that, in just a few verses, it says, this generation shall not pass, okay, until these things are fulfilled. It is not the end of time. It is that 70 AD period. What does Daniel talk about in Daniel chapter 12? He talks about a time. Daniel's asking fervently. He wants to know about his people and what the outcome is going to be for them. And he tells them, a time is coming that has never occurred before. It's going to be very bad. He's not asking about 2,000 years in advance. He's asking about his people right now, okay, when they're getting ready to get the word to come back. I don't know, what is it, 536 BC? That's when they come back. 536, that's when Cyrus says go. He wants to know about that time. The 70 years are coming up, and so he tells them, you know. There are so many other things like this found in there that support that argument. That it is clearly discussing judgment, you know, when it comes. I think I had another one. Let's see. Oh no, I was just going to use that verse. Okay, great. Anyways, there's more. I've got several others that I want to show. But that's one thing that we do get out of these prophets is a better understanding of how to interpret language that looks a little bit confusing on the outset, but it leaves an opportunity for error to just go rampant. And people do stuff with those verses that's just unconscionable.
The Glory Land Way. I'm in the way, the bright and shining way. I'm in the Glory Land way. Telling the world that gospel call today. Get in the glory land way. Wanderers come home, oh, hasten to obey. For I'm in the glory land way. I'm in the glory land way. I'm in the glory land way. Heaven is nearer and the way groweth clearer, for I'm in the glory land way. Onward I go, rejoicing in his love. I'm in the glory land way. Soon I shall see him in that home above. Oh, I'm in the glory land way. I'm in the glory land way. I'm in the glory land way. Heaven is nearer and the way groweth clearer, for I'm in the glory land way.
Studying this book of Isaiah, we've got a gospel meeting coming up next week, and Isaiah had a pretty interesting way of getting attention we learned about tonight. So if anybody wanted to try that out, we might have some extra attention. Glad y'all were paying attention in class. Anyway, if you look at the back of the book, there's a website. The Bible Speaks. So of course you can buy some stuff, but also there's this link to some YouTube studies. I found myself on a long car ride, and so audio only, safety first. I was listening to some of these. There was a full hour. I was listening to one on the Gospel of John. It's the same fella, I think, that writes the book. Now, these are not like highly produced, super modern videos. These are like digitized VHS tapes. Kids, you can ask me about those later. But he spent a whole hour on a single verse. And tonight, I promise to keep it much shorter, but I hope that you'll find these thoughts just as worthwhile. It is a very, very familiar verse. In fact, if I asked you to quote it, even if you think you can't quote a single verse, I bet you can quote this one in the King James. It's more cut off on this one. But John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. We all know this verse. We've heard it since childhood. We've seen it on billboards, coffee mugs, bumper stickers. Everyone knows it. Even those who wouldn't claim to be religious, they're familiar with this verse. In fact, as a 90s child, I remember Stone Cold Steve Austin parodied this verse. This is well known. 25 words. Those 25 words managed to capture the entire gospel message, though. Some people call it the greatest verse because it tells the most important truth of the world. It starts out, for God. For God, not for man, not for religion, not even for the church. It starts with the one who started everything. The God who spoke the universe into existence, the one that holds the world in his hand and yet knows the numbers of hairs on your head. He's not detached, he's not distant, he's personal. And he loves you. That's the foundation of everything that follows. The greatest being acting out with the greatest motive. He so loved the world. This tiny word, so, carries pretty heavy weight. He didn't simply like the world. He didn't put up with it, tolerate it. He so loved it beyond comprehension, loved it beyond measure. When we love, conditional a lot of times. We love those who love us back. But God loved a world that rejected him. Romans 5:8 says it plainly. God showed his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That's not some sentimental affection. That's sacrificial action. For God so loved the world, and that means all of us, every nation, every race, every sinner, every saint. No one's excluded. No one's beyond reach. The world's greatest problem has always been sin. It's not politics, not economics, not education. It's sin. It's separation from God. And God, seeing that need, he decided to meet that need himself, in that he gave his only begotten Son. He didn't loan him. He didn't send an angel. He gave his Son, his only begotten Son, the unique, one-of-a-kind Christ. Think about that. The Father gave up the Son so that sinners might become sons and daughters. Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians 9:15, "Thanks be to God for his inexpressible gift." King James says unspeakable. It is unspeakable because there's no words that can match the magnitude of this great act. I really should have went back through these slides and made sure that they translated fine, because that looks silly. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him, whosoever, not the good enough, not the religious enough, anyone who believes. That's the open door of grace. But don't mistake belief for mere acknowledgement. True faith is living faith. Faith that repents, that obeys, faith that endures. In fact, the same exact chapter, if you go just a few verses earlier, Jesus says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God." So we know that belief is not just mere belief. Belief leads to obedience, and it always has. He should not perish. Should not perish. That's what's on the line. Eternal separation from God. We won't talk about perishing all that much anymore, but Jesus did often. Hell is not a metaphor, it's a reality. And God's love is so deep that he refuses to let us go there without a fight. He offers deliverance, salvation, a way out, but only through his Son. Have everlasting life, eternal life. Not simply existing forever, endlessly, but perfect fellowship, a place where there's no death, no crying, no tears, no pain. Every wrong is made right. A place prepared for us, prepared for those who love him. Notice, it's have everlasting life. Have it, not earn it. We don't work our way into heaven. We receive it through obedient faith. It is a gift, but we have to unwrap it. Everything in this verse leads to the moment of response. God's already done the giving. Christ has already done the dying. The Spirit's already done the revealing. Now we have to respond. Romans 6 says that when we obey from the heart, when we repent, when we confess, when we're baptized, we're made free from sin and become servants of righteousness. And that's not earning salvation. That's accepting it on God's terms. So tonight, whenever we see this really familiar verse, hopefully you'll see it a little bit of fresh eyes. For God so loved you that he gave his only begotten Son. God so loved Tim. God so loved Jonathan. God so loved Alan that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. That's the gospel in one breath. The greatest being showing the greatest love, offering the greatest reward through the greatest sacrifice, and leaving you with the greatest decision. So if you've never obeyed the gospel, tonight's the night. Let's do it. And if you wander, tonight is the moment for you to come home. But whatever your need, we ask that you come while we stand, while we sing.
But close thine eyes against the light. Poor sinner, harden not thy heart. Be saved, oh, tonight. Oh, why not tonight?